Okay, now that I'm done with the SB-200 Heathkit, this is a final walkthrough, talk through. I'm not gonna fire it up or show how many watts it do. I just did that one. This is just my thoughts and a walkthrough on this amplifier. The things I like, the things I don't like, and that's me throwing my 2 cents in. So if that's not your thing, this isn't a video for you. So anyway, Heathkit SB-200 is a dual 572B tubes. Tubes have a dissipation of 160 watts each, so 320 watts of plate dissipation. With amplifiers, I always go by bird watts. It's going to be somewhere around the plate dissipation, and peak watts is going to be somewhere around double that. So 320 watts bird, 600 watts peak, for this amplifier. That's about all it do. Some amplifier makers make a 4-tuber with 572Bs. I think I recently did one with the MFJ. And the MFJ one does about 1300 watts out. That's what it's rated for, with 4 of those 160 watt tubes. And who's it? Dentron makes the Clipperton and 160L with 4 572Bs, and again about 1200 watts out for 4 tubes, about 600 watts out for 2 tubes like this one here. And the Mohawk 10 I just did has 2 of the same tubes, same thing, 600 peak, 300 bird, give or take. Nowhere around that. You can't beat plate dissipation because that's how many watts the tubes can eat. Can't get around that. I like the size of this thing. I do like that it's fully metered, even though it's a single meter, but you can measure voltage, RF out, relative power out, even SWR. That's the SWR calibrate there. Plate current and grid current, with the switch and that single meter. I like that. Nice big knobs for your tune and load, and this one's been mono banded, so the band switch is just a dummy, can't really turn that. Main power, no standby or anything, but it doesn't have a automatic keying circuit. With this amp, you either need a foot switch or you need to have some kind of keying circuit, like from the radio or an external keyer to key this amplifier up. Also, on this amplifier, that's about it for the front. It has a decent sized transformer, even though it does use a voltage doubler. The Heathkit SB-220, in my opinion, the transformer is undersized. It originally used these big old can caps that a lot of early amplifiers used. Anybody know why they put the cardboard or paper over these can caps? Because that's all it is a silver metal body capacitors with the sleeve of cardboard paper over it. Well, I'll tell the answer. I won't leave that one a mystery. They use these caps in series. So the positive side is hooked to that inner terminal, that single terminal there, and then the negative side is hooked to the outer terminals, which is ground. So when you have these in series, you're going to actually have voltage on the ground sides, positive, negative, and so on. And there's 6 of them. So the one that's hooked to the positive out is going to have 2400 volts on the positive terminal. That's the positive out, and that one is going to have about 2000 volts on the negative side. So if you left that uncovered, that metal outer jacket would have voltage on it, and that'd be a dangerous thing. And you got to worry about arcing and electrocution with all that. So to try to get ahead of that, since all that metal cover, that metal outer jacket would be conductive, they just put cardboard around it as far as a safety factor when they have high voltage in series like that. Okay, so that's all that's about. These new caps in it they make them a lot more compact, a lot smaller. Now even some of the better big amps like Alpha and M-Tron, which are really well built amps. If you see the capacitor bank and the power supply board and they shrunk them down. They're really small now. It's amazing how far they came with capacitor technology. But other than that, they haven't really improved technology on anything much else. Resistors shrunk a little bit, but are pretty close to the same. They definitely haven't done much with transformers, and they came out with diodes. They just make them bigger now. In the old days, they used a lot of 1 amp diodes. These actually look like 3 amps in there. And nowadays they got 10 amp diodes, 1000 volt 10 amps that are cheap. You can get them like for 10 cents or a quarter a piece for the big old 10 amps diodes. And now they're coming out with Schottky, if I pronounced that right, diodes that have a lower voltage threshold, so they're a little bit cleaner, and they put out or they transfer a little bit more of the transformer's voltage. Like the normal diodes in here cut off at about 0.7 volts, and them Schottkys they cut off about 0.3, 0.4 volts. So you get more of the actual curve or a better duty cycle, and they're a little bit less noisy and cleaner with the Schottky diodes. And they're cheap now too. That's technology, I guess, moving forward, right? Other than that, basic amp, 2572Bs, grounded grid, tune, load. One little weird quirk of this amplifier only is that's your tune, which comes out the tubes, goes through the blocking cap into the tune, and then it goes through your tank coil. And that's the original placement where the tank coils were, down here on this side of the coil. And then this is from the factory. This is not me, changing and all that. I don't like the way they do this, because normally you put the tank coil in between the tune and the load, because it goes into the tune, through the coil, and out to the load. So it's an easier and usually a cleaner, shorter run to go, tune, tank coil, load. But Heathkit didn't do that. They didn't do that, because it's tune, it goes through the tank coil on this side of it, and then we're going to turn it around. It goes underneath and across here, and then that's the load. So it's got that long path, which is not the greatest thing, but anyway, that is factory. That long path is. That's not me changing it and altering it. That's the way they factory did it with these holes, and that's just the path of it. Don't like that. I actually wanted to change it and put the tank coil here in between these two, but it just wouldn't fit on top and around this area. And the only other way to do it, if I would have moved the tune capacitor over here, but it wasn't enough room to move it to use that hole here where the band switch was. So I was like, well, we'll just leave it alone, though I don't like it. There are, a lot of things that I don't like in amps that, ain't going to take the time and the effort to fix. So I just don't like that routing of that. The longer path is ripe for more harmonics and parasitics and bad stuff and loss, going on, where a short path is good, in this case. But no, they went the long route. Don't like that. The capacitors are pretty good size, not cheap or undersized or anything like that. Nice blocking cap. Even a decent tank coil. I say a lot of the Heathkits and other amps are made cheap and undersized. But for basically a 500 watt amp, I do like this one. Also had a tuned input, even though somebody else had took out all the other bands and left it only the 10 meter in it. We like tuned inputs. You know, some cheaper amps don't have a tuned input, so we like that. That's the back of the transformer on what I call my Ugly Betty. And underneath it's not a lot, because this amp only runs on 2 voltages. You got the high voltage, the high voltage power supply over here, and you got the negative bias over here. The fan, the safety choke here in case the blocking cap, you know, lets go. And then your relay with 2 poles only, which is a quirk of this amplifier. I'm like, how can they get away with the 2 poles only when you need that 3rd pole to ground, or, you know, put the amplifier in conduction when you key the amplifier? Well, after a little research, we found out that, you know, they do use the negative bias to key the relay. They don't have a low voltage or use the filament voltage and, you know, a diode and a cap to make it, turn it into DC to run the relay. On low voltage, they use the 120 volt negative bias, both to key the relay. So you got the negative bias going into the relay, and then the outside of the cold side or ground side of the relay, it's got the negative bias coming out, and that goes to the foot switch or keyer for the relay. You got the negative 120 at that pin, which I don't like, you know, using high voltage for that, because you got 120 volts, which is a little bit dangerous, you know, coming out at you. You know, that'll bite. And then don't let it bite your radio. Most transistor modern radios can't handle 120 volts keying going into them. And you use a buffer for those radios that can't handle it. But also how they keyed it up or made this amp go into conduction, because the 120 volt line goes through the relay. They also got the 120 volts coming out of the relay going into the tubes to bias the tubes and not conducting. So the tubes are sitting happy, not flowing, not conducting, no plate current with that negative 120 volts on it. And then when the foot switch keys the relay, which grounds that 120 volts coming out the relay, it also grounds that 120 volts going up into the tube. So that's how they got away with only using 2 legs of it. Better circuitry would have been you know, use 12 volt, you know, which is a more common relay. 12 volts is not dangerous, you know, going out to your foot switch. You know, 12 volt going into a radio that keys it up is good. Negative 120 volts is bad, and you'll need a buffer. You wouldn't need it for the 12 volts, but you know, back in 1960s or so, maybe 70s, when they made this amplifier, that's a little shortcut they did. You know, save on a little money, save on parts count. You don't need a separate low voltage supply. Don't need a 3-pole relay. You can use a 2-pole relay, but you end up with 120 volts coming out. I do like that this amplifier can go 110 or 220. Even though I don't know if you really need 220 for a 500 watt amplifier, but I guess it was your final and only amplifier. Why not? I did this on the last video, but again, find a pointer here. Yeah, let's use this for a pointer. Sorry. If you could see the jumper, it's a little piece of wire going between this one and this one, and another one between this one and this one. Yeah, you can see it there up close. That's your 2 jumpers for 110 operation. And Heathkit uses this on all the amplifiers I know, the SB-220s, etc., that I have worked on. They use this same terminal strip and the same type of jumpers, where if you want to go to 110, you just get rid of this jumper, get rid of that jumper, and then put 1 jumper between the 2 in the middle here, and that'll convert it to from 110 to 220. And that's it as far as the jumpers on this. So we like that. You can go to 110, 220. Originally for the RF input over here, jack, it used the old RCA jack, a little bitty RCA jack for the input, which is kind of interesting. You know, it takes a 100-watt drive, and I wouldn't want to run 100 watts into a RCA jack. And everybody uses SL239s too. And so when I got this amp, it was just a hole here. It didn't have anything, so we actually put in that SL239. We'll probably add 2 more screws, but I got to find some screws and nuts that'll fit that. But we added that SL239 and got rid of the stupid RCA jack, which this one didn't have anyway. Whoever modded it already got rid of the ALC. Because, you know, whoever modded this was modding it for a CB amp, and I don't know any CBers that actually use the ALC circuitry. That's your foot switch. And then that's about it for this amp. You know, pretty basic. If you know the little quirk about the 120 volts for the keying circuit, you know, if you use the foot switch, I guess it's okay. I'd be careful though. You know, if that thing arcs, I would, you know, definitely wear shoes and socks in case that thing arcs on your foot switch. You know, you got a tube arc where the high voltage on the tube goes to the grid, and the grid is where they're sending that negative 120 volts at. So just be mindful of that. I definitely say it would be a little bit more better and dependable amp if you converted the amp to use a low voltage relay, and hence low voltage for the keying circuit. But a little work, a little bit more money. I guess if I keep this amp one day, you know, maybe we'll get back into it and do that. However, it's working, and is except for the 10 meter mod, 10 mono band 10 meter is fairly stock, except for that. You know, we didn't. And then speaking of that, I get people who like, I want original capacitors and original stuff in it. So where can I get originals? No. You know, these big old can caps, you know, they're pretty much obsolete. Like I said earlier, you know, big old alphas and M-trons, which is, you know, $3,000, $5,000, $8,000 amplifiers. They use modern capacitors like that too. If you see it in their amps, it looks amazing. No, original can caps. No. And then the bleeders here, you know, speaking of originals, this big long one here is a 7-watt bleeder, and it used very low resistance. I believe it was 30K. Trying to turn it around so you can see it, but it looks like my camera won't focus, or does that even have it? No, it's kind of faded out on the older ones. But 30K is too low. That's too much bleed, too much wasting heat. So, you know, if you wanted to go original, well, okay, get you some 30K 7-watt resistors and stick them back in there, right? Whole lot of heat, you know, for that 30K, whole lot of wasted power, and that power goes up in heat, where modern thinking is to add more resistance, you know, more like 100K, maybe even 150K, right? Lighter bleed, but lighter wasted power. And hence, whoever did this modification, they added resistance to the bleeders, right? So the 30K was too low, so they added, looked like 227Ks. So they actually made that 30K almost up to 100K, like 3 times the resistance. So 1/3 the heat, 1/3 the lost power, you know, by upping the resistance, and that's why they did that. I don't like having 3 resistors in series like that. So what I did is I got 3-watt modern resistors that I put in there. And the only reason I brought that up again, I get people all the time say, where can I get original at? Man, just me, forget originals. You know, when modern stuff is better for it anyway, right? So that's just my thoughts. I think I went through everything I went through with it. Got a little bit more long with it than I expected, but hey, I'm getting old and senile. So that's about it. This is the Heathkit SB-200 Ugly Betty Mono Bandit. All right, bye.